We're back. Anita Hill, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
This week, White House aide Kathleen Willey accused the President of the United States of groping her. How should Americans assess her comments?
Well, you know, I think you've got to look at the interview that was run on Sunday night, and you've got to look at the content of the story. But I really don't think that the American public has quite enough to really assess whether, in fact, this event occurred, or if it occurred exactly as she described. We've really heard only a general denial from the President. We haven't heard much more than that. And as the week has gone on, we've heard more and more information. And I think we are really at a loss to make a clear assessment of exactly what happened in the Oval Office during that incident.
The White House has been very vigorous in getting stories about Kathleen Willey out and letters she had written to the President. Is that attack the accuser appropriate?
Well, I have to say that Ann Lewis tried to make a distinction between what they were doing and what happened to me a few years ago. I think there were some implications in getting those letters out that I do not like. The implication was that Kathleen Willey was pursuing President Clinton by writing these letters or somehow using an incident to maybe blackmail the President. And I'm not sure that we can draw any of those inferences from the information, just the mere fact of the letters. I think the real trouble is that people will look at those letters and perhaps base credibility on those alone, and to give both parties a benefit. I think we ought not base our judgment on any one thing, any one matter at all. I think we have to look at the totality of the facts.
When you made your accusations about Clarence Thomas, verbal abuse in effect, many said, well, because of that alone, he was unqualified to sit on the Supreme Court. This is physical abuse alleged against the President. Would that disqualify him to be President?
Well, first of all, the office of President is an elected office, and the people have to decide whether or not they want to elect the President. I think they've already made that decision. They made it twice. There were rumors of these allegations or this type of behavior out there before, and the people in 1996 elected him after the Paula Jones incident. So I think the people have already spoken. The situation in 1991 was very different. We had a person who was nominated for an office. It wasn't the presidency. It wasn't a termed position. It was a position that is a lifetime position. So it's a little different in the situation where you have someone who is going to be sitting on the Supreme Court making judgments about the very kind of cases that we are confronted with in the realm of sexual harassment. So I think to say, well, this situation involved physical and Clarence Thomas is only involved verbal is really inappropriate and misleading, really.
Let me show you something that Gloria Steinem wrote in today's New York Times and show it on our screen for our viewers. She said the truth is that even if the allegations are true, the President is not guilty of sexual harassment. He's accused of having made a gross, dumb, and reckless pass at a supporter during a low point in her life. She pushed him away, she said, and it never happened again. In other words, President Clinton took no for an answer.
Well, I think that one of the things that we have to understand is that the sexual harassment law covers discrimination. It is about preventing sex discrimination in the workplace. In this incident, we don't have Ms. Willey claiming that this behavior was severe and ongoing or pervasive enough that it became a condition of her employment. She's not making that claim at all. And in fact, no one has in fact made that claim. She says in the deposition, I believe, that she was not given any particular favor at the White House because of this incident, nor could she say that she suffered any disadvantage because of this incident. So I think in fact we are talking about sexual harassment, at least based on the facts that we have in front of us, even if we assume that what she said in her interview and the depositions are true.
So do we dismiss the President's alleged behavior, as Ms. Steinem suggests, because he backed off when he was told no, it's acceptable?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that we have to evaluate it not on the basis of whether it's sexual harassment, but evaluate it on the basis of what we would like to see in terms of the behavior and the moral decisions and judgment of the president. But I think that the American public has become quite cynical. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she reminded me that now, in the last few years, we've heard all kinds of information about the sexual activities of all kinds of presidents. President Johnson, President Kennedy, President Jefferson, President Bush. And I think the American public has heard so much about the sexual activities or sex lives of these individuals that we've sort of become cynical and sort of said, well, if he did it, maybe that's okay. They all do it. And unfortunately, that we're now looking at this at the time of the presidency instead of with hindsight. So for President Clinton, he's going to suffer a disadvantage because it is now that these allegations are coming out during his presidency. But I think what Ms. Steinem also says is that we have to look at the totality of the presidency and how has he been on women's issues generally. Is he our best bet, notwithstanding some behavior that we might dislike? And I don't think that most women have come to the point where we've said, well, this is so bad that even if he is better on the bigger issues, we can't have him as president.
Is that a double standard for a liberal as opposed to a conservative?
Well, I think it is a reality that we have to deal with. We live in a political world, and the reality is that we want, there are larger issues other than just individual behavior. But you talk about a double standard, and I was listening to Senator Lott say that the campaign against the individuals, Ms. Tripp and Ms. Willey, brought by the White House was really egregious and offensive. But I don't remember Mr. Lott coming out in 1991 and talking about how awful the campaign against me was. So maybe there is a double standard, but isn't that the nature of politics?
Is the message coming out of Washington that if a woman comes forward and makes an allegation against a powerful person, they better be prepared to pay a huge price?
Well, that is a message coming out of Washington, and one of the things that distresses me most about the whole situation, as it is coming out of Washington, is the impact that it may have on not necessarily the women in Washington, but the majority of these cases of sexual harassment are not coming out of Washington. And what is the average complainant who might have a legitimate claim, a strong claim, going to think? What are they going to learn from this this show that's going on in Washington? Is this going to chill the number of complaints or reduce the number of complaints? And what will it do for the issue of sexual harassment? Will it set it back? That is really a chief concern that I have, and I think we ought to be dealing with that question, because that is really what's going to affect the lives of most Americans.
Gwen?
You've been making a distinction this morning between sexual misconduct, alleged sexual misconduct, and sexual harassment. From what you have read, you're also writing a book on sexual harassment. From what you've seen in Paula Jones's case, as opposed to Kathleen Willey, who is not making a claim of sexual harassment, Paula Jones is. Does Paula Jones have a case?
Well, Paula Jones's case is peculiar in a number of ways. One of the ways that it is peculiar is that it's not brought under Title VII or any state's human rights statutes or legislation. It's brought under federal legislation, but it was untimely in terms of the parameters of the Title VII legislation. So it is a different kind of proof that she's going to have to establish in order to make her case. And I haven't read, all of the pleadings. Of course, the documents are supposedly under seal, although there have been a lot of leaks.
Not exactly.
Not exactly under seal. But I think that one of the things that it seems to be missing from what I've read about the case is the discrimination element. Certainly the allegations, even if we assume that they are true, show a level of misconduct, but the allegations about some kind of poor or bad effects on her employment don't seem to really meet the standard for a sexual harassment claim under Title VII. And I think even they're going to be even harder to prove under the statute that she's brought the claim under. So no, if you just look at what's out there so far, I have a hard time finding any adverse ramifications for her in terms of her employment based on the alleged incident in the hotel room.
There's been a lot of interest in your opinions on this whole subject since these matters have come back into the public eye. You have written that a national conversation on race that the president launched last year is now turned into a national conversation on sex. The national conversation on race, for all intents and purposes, seems to have petered out somewhat. Do you anticipate that this one will? And if it doesn't, are we going to be enlightened by our national conversation on sex?
Well, I hope we are, and I think we can be. But I think one of the things that has to come out of this national conversation is a sense of what is the law and what are the rights of individuals who have claims out there, who want to pursue those claims, who are really, and those individuals who don't have claims but really want to stop the problem of sex discrimination through sexual harassment in the workplace. So yes, I think we can learn, and we will learn if we get to that information eventually. The other thing is that we might want to eventually get to the issues of credibility, and how is credibility judged in these cases? Are we looking at the way a person looks? Are we looking at the race of a person? How would an individual assess whether or not they are going to be deemed credible by a jury? So those kinds of discussions are ones that are going to have to be had in order for us to really move forward, I think, with these issues on a broader scale.
But those same questions were raised 7 years ago when you brought them, when you burst onto the national scene. There were discussions about credibility, there were discussions about race, there were discussions about any number of issues about what exactly is sexual harassment, and we were supposed to have made great strides. Do you feel that are you disappointed? Are you surprised that we're having the same conversation in some ways all over again?
Well, I have to tell you, the whole week has been distressing. The back and forth has been distressing. I'm disappointed. I thought we had learned more. But one of the things I do know that we have learned, or did learn in 1991, was that this is a very real problem in the workplace. And I have to say that even though there are people who are saying, oh, well, we've gone too far, when I talk to women around the country, they tell me what a better workplace they are experiencing now because of what happened in 1991. It's not a perfect workplace. The problem still persists out there, but we can move forward. We did in 1991, not far enough, clearly. And yes, you don't have to remind me that those conversations did go on, the conversations about credibility. But I think that we're now at a point where we can take those to an entirely different level.
But isn't a bigger problem if the president is seen as the major transgressor?
It is, I don't think it's a bigger problem. The problem is translating what we learn about the president and his situation to the lives of individuals out there in the workplace. And that's going to be the problem, I think, that we're going to have.
That has to be the last word. Anita Hill, we thank you for joining us this morning on Meet the Press.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.